Hey everybody, welcome to another DW Plays video. This time we are taking a look at Rise of the Robots, a somewhat legendary fighting game from 1994, which was released in the US for PC and the Super Nintendo, or SNES, and more people know the SNES version, so this is a bit of an oddity here, being the PC version. And getting it up and running on PC with DOSBox is no big deal. It's pretty straightforward. You just basically mount the CD, and that's about all you need to do. It's another matter entirely to try to play this thing. Now, I had to go into the setup and modify the controls, because by default, the Player 1 controls are Q, A, S, and Z, or Z, for those of you who are not American English speakers. Q is up, Z or Z is down, A and S are left and right, of course. And then the Control and Alt keys were the attack and block button. I modified that to be WASD for movement, and then a couple of letter keys for attack and block. It doesn't really help, because the controls are atrocious. I mean, you're probably thinking 2D fighting game, one attack button? Yeah, one attack button. I mean, it has a block button like Mortal Kombat, and you have a variety of moves you can do. I have no idea how to do any special moves in this game at all, regardless of which character I'm playing as. I don't actually remember if there are any special moves in this. I know there are in the sequel. And I will be fair, I don't know how this game got a sequel, but the sequel is a much, much better game than this. It is actually a playable fighting game. This, on the other hand, I would not describe really as playable, per se. You do have two modes here in single player. You have Mission Briefing, which is your basic arcade or campaign mode or whatever, where you play as the cyborg, who is the character pictured here. And you go up against a bunch of robots. It's just, the story, from what I can tell, is basically just you go through the tower, which has been taken over by robots, and you are just trying to defeat all the robots and bring the tower back under control. Nothing special there. Then there's the training mode, which is 1v1 fights, where you can actually select which character you play as, but if you select any other character than the cyborg, you're only fighting the cyborg. I don't know why they did it that way. But we'll go ahead and start with Mission Briefing here, and then after I inevitably fail miserably at that in the first matchup here, because I've actually never made it past the first match in this game. I have managed to beat the sequel before, but it took a while, and it was frustrating, and anyway, that's for another video. But I've never made it past the first mission on this, or first battle on this one. I mean, I know I'm not very good at fighting games, I never have been, but this is just ridiculous, and you'll understand here in a moment. The training mode, on the other hand, we'll follow up with after I've inevitably failed at this arcade mode. So let's go ahead and start the arcade mode here. Now, I will be fair, the sound is mostly fine, and these visuals for the time, which is 1994, are actually pretty decent. And I think that's basically what they were going for with this. They were going for graphics over everything else, which is not a good idea. Never has been and never will be. I have always maintained that while graphics being very good are a nice plus, what really matter are story and gameplay. And, well, in a fighting game like this, where there's basically no story, gameplay is numero uno. And these controls are astoundingly awful. There is an awful delay when you press a button. And it's just, like, I'll press the button. You might be able to hear me pressing the button, or the key, and then see the delay from when I'm actually doing something. It is horrible. And the enemy generally outranges you. They generally do more damage than you. So you basically have to cheat. You gotta use cheap tactics in order to be able to beat them. And since you only have one button to attack with, the actual attacks you will do depend on how you're moving, and it is incredibly awkward. I mean, you can see there that I just got completely curb stomped, and then you get this glorious game over screen here. So that was the arcade mode, which I have never managed to make it past that first mission. So let's go into training mode here and select someone who isn't the absolutely terrible cyborg. So you have, as you can see, a few options here. You have the cyborg, and then you also have this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy. We're going to go with this guy because why the hell not? And you do have different cutscenes that'll play for the different fights here. So it'll go through this sequence here, and you might be thinking, wait a minute, DW, you selected the sentry bot. Why is it showing this guy running around and doing stuff? Well, it plays the same cutscenes that it plays during the actual arcade mode or campaign or whatever for when you encounter these robots. And so it'll act like it's from the cyborg's perspective, but then when you actually start playing, you have control over the other character, and they are in the player 2 spot, which makes it kind of awkward. So notice I am playing the sentry bot now, and the AI, funnily enough, even with the cyborg, is actually able to be pretty effective. Mostly because of the timings it gets down, because it's not limited by the atrocious controls. You, on the other hand, are. So there's only so much you can do with that. I mean, I'm basically just mashing buttons here because I don't know any special moves. I don't really know any combos because you can't really do any combos with the way these controls are. Everything is sluggish, it's awkward, it is extremely clunky. So you basically just have to cheap it out and use your additional size and range to your advantage, and you will see just how easy it is to just mash buttons and win the fight. So there we just absolutely clobbered the cyborg. So it's not a good game, to put it lightly. This is an absolutely atrocious fighting game. I pity anyone who had this back in the day. I didn't have the first Rise of the Robots back in the day. I didn't get it until the second one. And the second one actually, like I said, is a playable fighting game. It is a much, much better game than this. And it even has a main theme song by Brian May called Cyborg. And while the quality of that song in the actual game is very bit crushed because, well, the joys of PC gaming back then, it is actually a pretty kick-ass song. For those of you who don't know who Brian May is, he is the guitarist for Queen. So they had some pretty good star power with the main theme song on Rise 2 Resurrection, or Rise of the Robots 2. It's a shame that the game itself was really not very good, and the controls for it really weren't all that good either. They're certainly better than this. They're much more responsive. It actually has multiple buttons for attacking, and you actually do have special moves. The manual even tells you what those special moves are. It's kind of neat. You can even play it like a normal fighting game. You select whatever character you want when you go into the arcade mode, and you can actually even change their color palette if you want, which is kind of neat. I'll do another video on Rise 2 Resurrection at some point. But suffice to say, Rise of the Robots 1, since I can't even get past the first fight here, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to be able to review this. So you get a DW Plays instead. I hope you enjoyed this abject failure of a game, and I will see you all in later videos.